Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to extend a warm welcome to each one of you to the session, Turning Barriers into Bridges for a Climate-Ready Global South. As the low-carbon transition gains momentum, emerging markets are advancing, but still face key challenges. This discussion will examine enablers, financing strategies, and tailored approaches to support climate-aligned progress, explore how the Global South can lead with resilience, innovation, and impact. We extend a heartfelt welcome to all our speakers. I request the moderator, Mr. Prabodha Acharya, Group Chief Sustainability Officer, JSW, to take the lead and commence the discussion. I also request the panel members, Professor Tetsuya Watanabe, Ms. Tracy Wyman, Ms. Prakya Khanna, and Dr. Ashok Menon to join the moderator on the dais. Thank you.
Thank you for that generous introductions to invite us to the panel. We have a very interesting panel and discussions. Towards the end of the day, I could understand the attention, but believe me, our speakers are going to make very interesting discussion about how Global South is going to leapfrog and become climate ready. But before we start the discussion, let me have a quick introductions. My name is Prabodha Acharya. He has already introduced me. I work as a Chief Sustainability Officer, but what I do actually, I help business to develop strategy to become sustainable. That's what I do for last more than 3 decades. But I have a wonderful panel. Let me quickly introduce Professor Watanabe-san. He is the president of the Economic Research Institute of ASEAN and East Asia. That's a leading regional think tank fostering high-level policy dialogue across governments, industry, and civil society. He previously served as special advisor to Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, with expertise in economy strategy and innovation. Welcome, Watanabe-san. Towards my left, I have Tracy Wyman. She is Chief Impact Officer, very important organizations we all have grown up with, Science-Based Target Initiative. She leads global efforts to drive ambitious climate actions. We need more ambitions. And in prior roles, she has also led climate partnership across Europe at Deloitte. So I have a lot of consulting experience as well. Welcome, Tracy. Towards my right, extreme right, we have Prakya Khanna. She is the Chief Sustainability Officer and Vice President of Process. She leads the Process Global Net Zero Transition across a diverse portfolio of technology companies. I believe I am pronouncing Process correctly. Thank you. A passionate advocate for impact-driven growth. I can vouch she is passionate. I was interacting for last half an hour with her. She has championed integrated reporting and embedded sustainability into corporate strategy at scale. Welcome, Pragya. Last but not least, my friend Ashok Menon, Dr. Ashok Menon. She is Director, Global Sustainability Operation Technology, SABIC. He plays a key role in advancing SABIC's circular economy and carbon neutrality goals, overseeing global efforts in energy management, life cycle assessment, and sustainability certifications. As you can see that I have a very diverse and experienced panel to talk about how we can make Global South climate ready and leapfrog. So let me start then, without taking any time, let me start the discussion and ask question, Tracy, to start with you. Ambition is important. Supported by targets and actions will lead to achieve the ambitions. My question to you is, how can companies set ambitious yet science-based target that reflect local realities like energy security and mix vulnerable infrastructure in emerging market? So what's your take, Tracy?
Okay, thanks so much for the question and for the invitation. Of course, the role of Science-Based Targets Initiative is to help companies understand how much and how fast they need to decarbonize according to their sector to align with the latest climate science. So that's what we do. We are a global charity, and we put out standards, tools, and guidance to give companies that support. So the ambition is to align with the Paris Agreement. It's consistent across markets. The implementation has to be relevant to the market where companies are operating. So that can be in multiple markets, it can be in a single market, and it's absolutely up to companies how they apply our standards to their own local context. So when we think about the Global South and countries in particular that have energy mix challenges, what we often see is companies honing in on location-based approaches. So building solar, wind, small-scale renewable or even large-scale renewable installations so that they can control their own access to energy where they have grid challenges. Just 2 weeks ago, I was in South Africa and had the exact same question and provided the same answer. What I heard from companies, we are putting solar panels on our rooftops, we are putting windmills in our next door to our factories, and trying to address the grid challenges ourselves while, and this is really important, working with each other and working with the government to understand the challenges. So the next thing, we heard it this morning, is energy efficiency measures. Because of course you can reduce your emissions not only by changing your source of energy, but also by reducing your demand. So that's a really important aspect for the Global South and all over the world. The other important thing is transparency. So I have heard that India's moving very quickly with disclosure requirements and is leading in that. It's very helpful because where companies disclose and can be transparent about their energy use right across the mix and distinguish by different sources of energy, that can send signals to the government to say we're committed, we're trying, we're facing these challenges. And that gives governments in all countries, I'm not talking specifically about the Indian government, it gives governments the confidence that companies are ready, that they have demand, and that they are looking to shift their energy mix. So that's really helpful. I had one other thing that I wanted to say, transparency and reporting. Transition plans. So in the Global South, it's really important that transition plans think about aspects and deal with aspects beyond decarbonization. So we of course know, we hear a lot about just transition. Companies need to think in their transition plans, how are they dealing with water usage? How are they dealing with circularity? How are they dealing with pollution? How are they dealing with the job impacts of their decarbonization strategies? And make sure that that's transparent and that they are talking about it. Because the other thing that I heard this morning that I'm really excited about is India, not only as the voice of the Global South, but as an innovator, right? That is leading the way, coming up with new ways and showing the world what's possible. That's what I hope to continue to see from India that already is leading the way.
Thank you, Tracy. Fascinating. I think you brought in very important aspect, the transition planning, how it is important to drive the changes. And I think energy transition you talk about, I still consider those are low-hanging fruits, but there are challenges how to deal with. I'll come back to on that later. But let me, shift to Pragya, because technology plays a very important role in driving the changes. So my question is that how can technology-led platforms drive scalable climate actions in Global South, specifically in informal sectors like agriculture, mobility, and SME small enterprises? I know you are dealing with a lot of those in your own experience. I think you are the best person to give us an idea about it. Pragya, over to you.
Thank you, Prabhupada. So, existentially, if we think about it, technology exists to solve human problems. And this is a human problem, a human-made problem. For those who don't know us, we're a company, it's a large lifestyle e-commerce business. In India, we have many companies. We have Swiggy team. My colleague from Swiggy is here in the audience, Neha. we have Rapido, food delivery business. We have Elastic Run. So a lot of technology platforms that are solving for essential human needs of efficiency, quick commerce, just having a more easy life and solving for that. At the same time, they're also solving for, and from a fundamental perspective, digital technology allows for the transition to less carbon emission intensive ways of lifestyle. I'll give you an example, tangible one from our portfolio. EdTech businesses, they allow for access to education in a very low carbon intense way. You don't have, the brick and mortar infrastructure or the books being printed or the travel commuting to and fro. You can reach far more millions of people and enable them access to learning where they are in their own situation. So technology solves for that. The other one is marketplaces. Who knows OLX over here? It's a marketplace. Have you ever bought from OLX or sold on OLX? It's also allowing for people to exchange goods and services instead of buy them, and they need to be manufactured from scratch, which means all the materials and that emissions that go into the manufacturing process. The extension of life is also critical, and this is digitally enabled by platforms. I can carry on, but also from a digital platforms perspective, there are emissions linked to deliveries. We all know that. And we've actually just done a report. It will be launched in a few minutes from now. And one of the really nice insights from the report, and it was also very key for me, it feels like I'm on the right path with the team over here, that if we were to decarbonize last mile deliveries, just in Delhi alone, that would lead to a reduction of 1/4 of the annual pollution that Delhi faces. Now, who would not want that? So technology can provide the answers. Actually, I think it's only technology that can provide the answers. I hope that covers it.
No, thank you, Pragya. I think you are absolutely right in the sense the technology and platforms will enable the faster transitions. And that reminds me to go back to Dr. Menon, Ashokji, on a different thing on technology, because you are operating all over the world. And in the production technology, in the process technology, you would have seen how you have applied some of those successfully in some of these, some part of the world. How do you see that transition, faster transition, infusion of those technology in the global south, or even taking on new technology in the global south, from your experience, from the SABIC experience, if you can elaborate? Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Thanks for this great question. And first of all, thanks a lot for CIA for inviting SABIC and being a part of this panel. So many of you who may not know, SABIC is a petrochemical company, a diversified petrochemical company headquartered in Saudi Arabia, but has global footprints from US to China, and we have a big R&D center located in India, in Bangalore. Now, being a chemical company, we are obviously a hard-to-abate sector, and considering this, sustainability becomes extremely important for us. It's integrated into our strategy in an extremely seamless fashion. And the best part is, since we operate at different geographies, for example, Europe, for example, where the regulations are pretty stringent, we need to meet those regulatory needs. We also are kind of expanding our base in India and Asia Pacific region, so we tend to kind of look at how to address the requirements here, not just from capacity building from the knowledge point of view, driving affordability, but at the same time meeting the requirements of the regulation in case we have to export it back to Europe. An example I can give you, for example, well, let's take for example the PET bottles. Now, PET bottles, we know we can recycle it back to, let's say, garments and stuff like that. But we have been kind of looking at how can we increase value of these materials. And one way of doing that is by recycling it to a higher molecular weight material. So we have developed technologies which can be kind of wherein you disintegrate this PET bottle and repolymerize it to higher molecular weight, and all of a sudden now it goes into applications like your automotives, healthcares, etc. And this has kind of won a lot of global awards. Now we have brought this technology, developed it in India, brought it to India, and even given it to MSMEs who are scaling it up and exporting it. Now when we are exporting it, we need to meet the taxonomy and the ESG requirements for those products. So those are already engraved into these activities. Similarly, capacity building, the knowledge for the MSMEs and driving. We have a Center of Life Cycle Assessment, a Center of Excellence in India, which is looking at doing the end-to-end carbon footprinting of all the products of SABIC. And we have this capability. We work with organizations like CII and FICCI to kind of transfer this knowledge to more people, for them to kind of start making a meaning, addressing the unintended consequence which LCA kind of brings in products to our chip. So these are some of the examples where we are driving in capacity building. We are bringing in the technology, sharing it with MSMEs to help them to take that to the next level, and also integrating all the like science-based targets. For example, we are looking at how do we kind of embed that into our products. For example, Scope 3, all the 15 category calculations that we are kind of doing and sharing that with our partners, so that they are able to meet our requirements when it comes to supply chain. So these are some of the advantages that we try to kind of learn and pass it on. And having a global footprint, we have an advantage of having this knowledge embedded. But the challenge here is making sustainability affordable. That's the new thing, because if you're making it affordable, you can really drive it. So that's something we are now looking at to take it to the next level.
So thanks. I think everybody will agree that having a global footprint will help in bringing the best practices across the value chain faster to give the results sooner. But we all understand everything is possible, or it can be scaled up with collaborations. And that is the reason I will turn to Watanbe-san to give your experience specifically in ASEAN and East Asian countries. What collaborations in technology gaps, finance gaps will help in not only accelerating the climate change, but in a just and equitable manner? How do you see the collaboration playing a role in driving a climate-ready society in South, Global South, specifically in ASEAN countries? Over to you.
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm based in Jakarta, Indonesia. So for Indonesia and for Southeast Asia, I mean ASEAN, energy transition is like India and other countries in Global South. It's climate and development priority. So in Southeast Asia, of course, like India, economies are expanding very quickly and need reliable and affordable energy. And at the same time, communities are among the most vulnerable to climate change. Climate readiness has to be part of growth strategy from the beginning. And ASEAN population 600 million, just half of the India, but still very large. And rapid industrialization is happening. So, but the region, ASEAN, I mean, reflects many of Global South reality. Fossil fuel still dominates the energy mix, and of course, renewable are growing. And regional, but there is a strenuous effort is happening for the regional cooperation, like ASEAN Power Grid. It's still developing, but just last year, Laos, PDR, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, power integration project expanded to 200 megawatts, allowing renewable electricity flow across the border. So this was a small step, but a significant step in showcasing how fragmented system can evolve into the shared resilience. Of course, there is no single pathway. In some countries, hydropower and renewable provide a strong base, but in other countries, solar and wind are scaling rapidly. In Elsewhere, biomass, hydrogen, and ammonia offer the solutions. So, and as I said, the regional cooperation is key. And in our institute area, we host the so-called Asia Zero Emission Center, working together with ASEAN member states and ASEAN Secretariat for the provide policy platform for facilitate country-specific and regional dialogue, focusing on the shared technology, focusing on the technology option, scaling pilot projects, and ensuring no community is left behind in the transition. On technology, of course, there are many technologies: hydrogen, ammonia, coal firing, CCUS, and SAF, and but important thing is maybe starting pilot project rather than waiting for global solution to mature. That's on the technology, and we are working on that with ASEAN member states. On finance, in many parts of the global south, maybe India, Southeast Asia, global capital is abundant. But the financing in emerging markets often face high risk premiums and fragmented standards and limited domestic credit market. These are not excuses, but real constraints that must shape the solution for the global south. Maybe I stop here.
No, thank you, Watanabe-san. I think you brought in two very important things, and that is tempting me to ask a follow-up questions to you. Is getting the finance at the right cost is we all know is a greatest instrument to drive sustainability. But how do you see policy framework and incentive structures together can bring the changes faster?
Can I continue?
Please.
Talking about the finance, our study together with ADB highlighted the capital costs in ASEAN are much higher than in developed markets. For example, solar project that is competitive in Europe can be nearly 80% more expensive in ASEAN because of the financing cost. To bridge the gap, maybe policy framework, as you mentioned, concessional finance, of course, guarantees and fast loss capital must be layered in, so that private investors come in. And private sector investors can see a viable return. Otherwise, nothing happens. And also, what we are saying is that not just, just a single asset basis, but if we aggregate renewable power, grid infrastructure, and also maybe sustainable mobility into a coherent pipelines, maybe the region, ASEAN, can create a scale institutional investors to come in. There are many ideas, but maybe how to take, risk gap by the blended finance and the private sectors, public sector's support. That's the key. We cannot just rely on the off-taker for the risk-taking.
No, thank you. I think I'll extend the discussion to ask Pragya, because you are doing investments. So how do you see the finance can play a role, and how do we bring more transition financing to Global South so that action can be accelerated? What's your views and your experience, because you are investing in so many companies?
So I'm going to actually do a bit of plagiarism blatantly from one of the previous sessions that we had. I'm going to answer this in three ways. So number one, what you just asked my colleague here on policy, enabling policy incentives. The role of policy and incentives cannot be underplayed, especially in the geopolitical scenario we find ourselves now, where the isolationism and protectionism has become is really limiting the flow of finance globally. It's where people see it as a risk. I actually see it as an opportunity for India and the Southeast Asian and our colleagues, the BRICS colleagues, to step up. So that's one. For us, for example, in our fleet electrification endeavors, what we're looking for is enabling policy incentives, financing not just for the OEMs and the manufacturers, because right now the cost of an electric vehicle is, the total cost of ownership is far lower than an ICE vehicle, but the upfront cost is really high, so it prevents adoption. So those, if we can have enabling subsidies, and that's what we've seen play a big role on greening of mobility fleets in other parts of the world. So I think that's to your first point. In terms of making capital accessible here, transparency, building on what Tracy was saying, global capital very often looks for transparency. So what are the use of proceeds? Is there a due diligence being conducted or enabled before an investment is allowed? And how transparent can that be? So there is, I think transparency is critical. It's super easy for an investor to be able to come in and say, or within, from a supply chain perspective, bring capital flows there, to say, oh, there is very transparent reporting. They've set science-based targets. There's their, their different sort of disclosures that are aligned with BRSR. So transparency is critical to unlock capital flows. And the third is, of course, the cost of capital remains high. We need to, I think if we're looking at the IFCs of the world for funding, they need to stop giving dollar loans, but rather give loans in local currencies, because otherwise nobody's going to further cascade that that concessional finance. It's not concessional finance if it's in a dollar loan, because you're hedging and you're not passing on the concession that you receive. I hope that helps.
Thank you. In fact, I don't want this discussion to really be only on financing, climate financing, but this is very important part if Global South has to transit faster and become climate ready. And your points is very valid in the sense that the cost of capital, the transparency in bringing disclosures is important, and that led, we should have the right transition plan. And Tracy, you touched upon the transition plan. I'm tempting to ask you, because my experience is that even, if we want to get money to transit, you must have a transition plan, and that must be ambitious. And if you have a science-based validated target, nobody asks question. So you possibly the gold standard in that, that aspect. So that is, thank you very much for that. But my question is that, do you think the science alignment need to be differentiated for different regions like, emerging markets or Global South has different aspirations, different path they are following. So do we need to evaluate everybody in the same scale? Or do you think there is options to further discuss? What will be SBTI's opinion? Or how do you see that as one of the criteria?
It's the question of the day. Yes.
Yeah.
So it matters not what I think. What matters is what is the reality on the ground in the markets that are driving ambition and what we heard from your ministers this morning, a new paradigm of development, right? Completely new innovative models that will be both clean and equitable and embed resilience in some of the places that are going to be worst affected by the impacts of climate change. And so the reason I started with, it doesn't matter what I think. I mean, I think you can imagine what I think, but because how Science-Based Targets develops our standards is through public consultation. And so we're in the process now of updating our flagship product, which is the Corporate Net Zero Standard. This is the one that NASPER's process have used to set their targets, and all of the 400 plus companies in India that have either committed or set targets. So we're updating the standard because it's now 5 years old. It has had a small update, but now needs quite an overhaul because things are changing so quickly. And so how we understand if the standard can be applied in local markets is we need to get feedback and participation in the process. So we did a first public consultation in April. Then we have received more than 1,000 pieces of input from all over the world, only 4 from India. And so my challenge to everyone in this room, I would like that to be 400 for the next public consultation. It's in October. We'll be working with CII to make sure that everyone knows about it, that we explain the next version of the draft, and we have an opportunity to get input from India. And what we need to hear is, we can work with this. This makes sense to us. Or here is something that really doesn't work in this context, and we need you to understand it. So when we hear from the local context and the local users of our standards is when we can think, well, what do we have to do to make this standard accessible? Because we are aware as much as anyone, if our standards aren't adopted and used, then they're not going to be driving decarbonization, and that's the entire point. That's what we're here for.
I think very important point you made, and a call for actions to all of us. We know, there is a saying, we don't ask, then you will not get, right? So we are not asking enough that what do we want. And that's what Tracy is exactly appealing to us. When the next consultation, I think it is happening next month, in October, I think we need to put forward our views and part of the consultation process, what we like to see, the standard to shape, and how the standard will drive those decarbonization. The point, no, October, November, okay. I think this is a good call you have given, good challenge you have given, and I appeal to all those who are listening here and not remotely to ensure that we ask more what we want will work for us in Global South, and so that SPTI will align accordingly to see that what will work in different geography. Is that something
Exactly.
correctly?
So it's not a promise that the standard will be specific to India, but without the input, it's very hard for us to know. But I just want to say one thing to build on what Pragya said about access to finance and the role of ambitious science-based targets, and having, well, when we were preparing, sorry, I'm plagiarizing from you. When we were prepping for this session, she said, you have to be willing to set a target without knowing how you're going to achieve it. Because the world is moving so quickly, and ambitious targets require innovation. And I think there's a finance and access to finance aspect there, because companies that set ambitious targets can then go out to the market and say, so here's our target, here's our transition plan, now we need the access to finance in order to achieve it. And it's a very powerful argument to show, even if you don't know exactly how to achieve it, that you know where you're going.
May I build on that for a quick second?
Yeah, maybe yes.
I apologize.
No, please,
Sorry.
go ahead.
But absolutely, you're so right. You know, through the past few days, and we've been having a lot of discussions with also our portfolio companies, but peers, and the largest question that is raised, and also my colleague here on stage raised it, is Dr. Menon, Scope 3, data and Scope 3. Yes, while we are solving for, and technology and AI will solve for the data and Scope 3, it's really simple. My Scope 3 is somebody else's Scope 1 and 2. And really, at some point, we'll solve it with data and digitization that's happening so rapidly. So I think we cannot wait for perfection before we set targets. Let's set the targets and figure out how we go. That was the approach that we took. And for us, failure is always an option. We're failing anyway. It's okay. At least we set a target, and we'll be very transparent with our stakeholders if we fail. But in that process of trying to succeed, we would have made some progress. And that's what's critical. Thank you.
True. Thanks. I think with that, let me turn to Ashok, because he's listening to us patiently. I know he has some remark on the Scope 3 and setting the standards. But here is my question. I have a specific question for you. Because you being the technology and operation head, what role does industrial innovation and material science play in addressing these environmental challenges to improve the performances?
Thanks a lot for this question. And actually, both Tracy and Pragya has done half of my job. But let me explain it a little bit more, right? Coming from a material company which makes materials, it's so very important to understand the carbon footprint of the material. Now we have EPR rules and regulations, but how many of us relate EPR regulations to the carbon footprint associated with it? When you are developing a product, the material has a carbon footprint. You have put a target, scope 1, 2, 3 put together, a big contribution comes from the materials associated with it. Now if you start working on reducing the carbon footprint of the material, you are gaining a big win. Now carbon has a value associated with it. Carbon is traded, and if you are able to reduce the carbon footprint of the product, you could kind of avail that as a premium, or at least the other company whom you are selling, you can kind of help them to decarbonize it faster. Simple example, extended producer responsibility for plastics. It says put recycled content into your material. Actually, if you look at it, the moment you put recycled content into the material, you have reduced the carbon footprint of the product straight away associated with it, right? And now I'm selling that product to my customer, like what Pragya said, scope 1, 2 is somebody else's scope 3. And now scope 3 of that person is getting reduced by this. So material plays an extremely important role. There is a huge opportunity existing. For example, when we looked at SABIC, we looked at not just mechanical recycle, we also looked at, for example, looking at, let's say, renewable feedstocks. Can I look at materials wherein carbon has already been sequestrated? Bring that. So we have actually used that to make pyrolysis oil or feedstock for our crackers to make low carbon products coming from, let's say, sequestrated products as such. So it plays a pretty important role, the technology, and it has. So if you even look at science-based targets, right, what they clearly says, if you are providing solutions to decarbonize your sector, 85% needs to come from engineering solutions. The remaining is what you can look at by planting trees or abating the stuff. So it becomes extremely important to address the materials, look at solutions, innovate it through R&D, and there are low-hanging fruits existing all through which can be kind of utilized to bring your carbon footprint down and put it to your advantage. Even we have gone one step ahead to look at automating the carbon footprint. So SABIC makes around 30,000 resin grades, for example. We need to understand for which we have a higher carbon footprint, for which we have lower. And for the higher ones, where are the hot spots I need to look into kind of bring it down. So it's not about just what we say as policies or compulsions or regulations. It is how we can improve our own internal processes and kind of take advantage of that to reduce our own cost. So I think these are some of the innovative solutions that we have been driving, and materials do play a critical. Thanks for this question, because it's very important and not necessarily people always connect, let's say, circularity to neutrality or the advantages that you get. Thanks.
Yeah, just to have a dialogue with everybody, I will encourage our audience to ask questions to the very learned panel. And if you have any questions, please raise it. In the meantime, we will possibly continue with discussion, but please let me know if anybody has any specific question to any specific panel or generic questions. So do let us know. Okay, so we have a question. Can you pass on the mic, please, there?
As I understand, you work for JSW Steel, right?
Absolutely.
Prabodh sir.
So you see your question to me, to the moderator.
So basically wanted to know how actually you look sustainability and what all are the major aspect you are looking at, right? Various companies are focusing more on the reports and each and everything. What do you think additionally in terms of tech or something? Can you share those ideas?
Okay.
Right.
So I think the question has come to moderator, so I have to respond. See, I started by giving my introduction. My job is to advise or strategize the business leader to make business sustainable. So that is what we do. In JSW also we do exactly, we need sustainability is part of the business strategy. It is not a standalone, or it is not focusing on reporting. Reporting anyway you have to do. So what we do, each and every actions. The other thing I must tell you that our other philosophy is that we look sustainability as an opportunity. Of course, there are risks we need to manage, but we focus on opportunities. Even in climate change, when we do a risk and opportunity analysis, I drive more opportunity. I'll give one of the examples here. We started a program which we call SEED, that is Sustainable Energy, Environment and Decarbonization. It's only about changing the minds of the people who are working in our factories. What they need to do is that they have to be conscious that to produce more with less inputs. That's nothing but efficiency improvement we are listening from the morning, right? You know the impact will create, everybody is happy to produce more because it gives you more money, right? It conserves resources. But at the end, in the underlying, it is capable of reducing almost 18 million ton of CO2 emission by 2030. Just to contextualize, it is equivalent to 3.5 million IC engines cars taking out of the road, or equivalent to annual emission of Sri Lanka. That's the impact in terms of climate mitigation. But in the underlying, to have the acceptance of the people, it is integrated in the business practices. Everyone meets, we call in a climate action center, they discuss, identify a problem and solve that problem with available resources. If they ask for a budget, specifically financial support, it has to have right ROI as per the set ROI norm in that in our business. I'm not going to tell what is that set target, but that's what it has to follow that. This is one of the examples. Similarly, we are transiting to renewable. It makes sense. It's less cost. So there are many examples. Our philosophy is, it is an opportunity we need to integrate in the business practices to ensure business is sustainable.
Absolutely. So, got the complete idea basically. Anything additional, like anything tech applied you are doing in terms of sustainability?
Okay, I think that we will go ahead and I'll discuss
Okay.
because I need to come to the subject what I am tasked to moderate the session.
Thank you. So
I'll come back to you. Anybody else has a question specific to the panel? Yeah, there, lady. Can you please pass on the mic there?
Thank you. My question is for Tracy. Tracy, like Prajna mentioned, we have set SBTi targets that are validated, but failure is definitely probability. How do you look at revalidation, especially when boundary conditions would change, because there's a lot of decarbonization happening even by way of transfer of assets, not necessarily going completely zero on that. I represent the power sector where a lot of PPAs are also coming to an end. So when boundary conditions change, what would be your outlook on revalidation of SBTi targets?
Okay, so I'm the Chief Impact Officer. I do have a validator here with me, Akriti, who can answer the more technical questions. But I think I'm going to expand the question a little bit and answer, if a company thinks that they're not going to achieve their target, then what? And this is a question that we are grappling with right now, because 2025 is the first year that a significant number of companies who set targets already are having the targets come due. And some companies are calling us and saying, we're not going to meet our targets. What should we do? Are we in trouble? Will we be punished? Are we thrown out of the initiative? And we have a new CEO, David Kennedy, who joined in April. And he's come out and said, look, the role of the SBTi is not to be policemen for decarbonization. Our role is to help companies understand how much and how fast they need to decarbonize, and eventually to try to provide them with support and to work with others like CII who can provide them with support and to help them. What Pragya said, failure is possible, it's an option, and it's okay. So for us, it's much more important that companies set ambitious targets and do the best they can than that they either say, oh, I don't want to set a target that I can't achieve, or they set a target that really is not so ambitious. That wouldn't probably be validated by SBTi. But for us, what's important is the effort, sharing, learning, and then you come back and you set another target.
May I also
In
add?
fact, I was discussing before. Yeah, Pragya, you want to add something?
Very quick after you finish.
Yeah, just, we are having a chat before this session in similar discussions. I think what's informed, there are two ways to work within the SBTi framework. One is you have a rule and you follow the rule, and there are validators, they will check whether you are following the rule or not. But something which you may not be following the rule because this is something unique, and there you have a provision to raise this, flag it up to the senior management, which is more strategic in nature. which may require change in their rules, right? So this provision is already existing there. What do you call that? Appeal process, and you can follow that, and then you possibly hear them. It is more appeal. I also look at this as also consultation to bring the change, but exactly it is not a consultation. It is appeal process. That's what she was telling. Pragya, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I'm just taking it to a higher level. You know, like why are we all sitting here today? Because the cost of not acting is far higher than the cost of acting and failure. So principally, failure should always be on the cards. And it's always on, you know, when you talk about financial performance, I've had this discussion with my CFO actually a few times where they say like, oh, you know, sustainability, we've set targets. I hope you're not going to be missing those targets. Our board STIs, our management STIs are linked to them. I mean, all the time there are companies that are, you know, missing their targets on financials. So why do we set ourselves at a different benchmark when it's about non-financial performance? So challenge back, push back, and I think the only way we can be brave is to say, you start from a position of, you never start from a position of fear. You start from a position of, let's go for it, let's see, and then we will explain it, and we have processes in place. And if processes are not in place, we will make sure they come into place. You know, when we set up, Gerald over here leads environment on my team, and he was leading the whole SBTI verification process, which took very long, just to share. And part of it was this discussion on, we don't fit into any of your boxes. And in the end, the SBTI team understood, and they did make a new box for us. So I think that's always an option.
Yeah, I thank all the panelists for very insightful views. In fact, we are the only second power sector company in India to have SBTI validated. 2027 is when we have to meet them, and I know there are things on the anvil where failure is likely, and therefore this question. But thank you very much for your insights. Very helpful. Thank you.
Congratulations. Any more questions? I think we have a couple of more minutes. Otherwise, I have a set questions to all the panelists. Start with you. Think about one barrier which could be an opportunity to bridge the gap or to have a climate-friendly economy in Global South. So one barrier that can be converted, or another one opportunities. How do we do that? Shall we start with, yeah, Tracy? Yeah, okay.
So the big barrier, right, it's scope 3, the big barrier. And the opportunity, as I see it, is collaboration between the big buyers and their suppliers. We're hearing about it from different companies. Collaboration, innovation, using technology, smart technology, data. You guys, I'm definitely following about this LCA library. You know, the knowledge is out there in the world. And what we're not yet doing a good enough job of is capturing it and crunching it and sharing it. And I think that is an opportunity that I really want to see India take the lead on. I love the ambition that I've heard this morning, the excitement about the, you know, the size of the population, the starting point, the leadership role, being the voice of the Global South. I want to see this innovation coming out of India, and I know I'm going to see it.
Yeah, fully agree. I think collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Collaborate for capacity building, collaborate for knowledge sharing, collaborate for identifying opportunities. I think these are something which we need to do in order to kind of really meet our requirement of climate neutrality.
I have to bring it home to our business. You know, unemployment in India is a big barrier right now. And the greening of every sector, all the way from you know, very technical jobs to very simple drivers who can drive an electric vehicle, that's an opportunity and a livelihood. So make just transitions the opportunity and the bridge rather than the barrier.
What to you?
Maybe we haven't discussed about the carbon market, maybe. And of course, it's difficult and challenging, but maybe we need to carefully design the carbon market, looking at both I mean, incentive structure as well as equity implication.
So collaboration, innovation, carbon market, these are going to help us to leapfrog to a climate resilient society in Global South. Let us give a big hand to all our panelists and thank you very much for your passion here. Okay, so we need to go for a photograph.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this we come to the end of this session. Our sincere gratitude goes out to all the speakers for making this an extremely insightful discussion. They've already gathered for a group photograph. I request the moderator to please present a token of gratitude to all our speakers. I request Ms. Tarika Kumar, Deputy Executive Director, CII-ITC Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development, to present the token of gratitude to our moderator. Thank you.